Well, and look, one thing that hasn't changed from the time I got into the industry to now, and it's amazing that your name is Tactiful because it really is. It's that tactile relationship with print
Yeah.
that everybody can go back to that first time that they understood what they were holding or smelling or feeling or touching or even applying to a surface. It's called a substrate, right? Could be a shirt, could be a piece of cardboard, but that physical relationship, and I think it transcends many different activities in human life. That once you have a physical manifestation of something with your memory, it's a pleasure, right? So you try to remember that, you try to build on it, and everybody I've ever met in the printing industry can remember the first time that they had that aha moment about print.
What's up, everyone? It's Eric Vessels with Tactful. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Taktiful Tuesdays. We're on episode 41, I believe, getting up there in numbers. Taktiful Tuesdays is where we explore how print, texture, finishing, and embellishments intersect with storytelling, innovation, and industry momentum. Today's guest is someone who operates at the crossroads of technology, content, and connection in the print world. My buddy Chris Curran leads media and events at Printing United Alliance, overseeing the editorial voice, sponsorship programs, and the industry's marquee expo, Printing United Expo, coming up soon. Before that, he crafted go-to-market strategies for the likes of Heidelberg, HP, Landa, shaped media-driven narratives at NAPCO, and printing impressions. His work is about amplifying stories, building communities, and elevating what print can mean. Hybrid, digital, physical future. Chris, welcome to the show, bro. I'm so thrilled to have you on finally.
I'm glad to be on. It's about time.
It is about time. I think we talked about having you on the show at like the last Printing United Expo, and here we are a year later, and I'm finally getting in. It's a kind of just rolls with it, but it's really good timing given that the expo is this close away. But before we get to all that stuff, there'll be plenty of time for that. I want to get a little bit of an insight because this show is really all about like kind of getting to know the person, right? What first ignited your interest in print or the graphics art industry, and how did your path lead you into where you're at today rather than purely focused on operations and manufacturing?
Yeah, I was listening to all the different things you were saying that I did
Yeah, I did
in the
that. I did that.
industry, and I'm like, wait a second, holy crap, yeah. But it's all really come easy to me because I just love printing. I think my first introduction to printing was, I think I was 7 or 8 years old, and I was making a T-shirt at a summer camp, and that was probably the seed that grew into me falling in love with a printing press in middle school, and then continuing that love for the craft through my education and getting a degree in it, and then really just pursuing a life that has always been grounded in something of print. Even when I went into the consumer products world, the best thing I got to do was do printing on the back of furniture, and we were doing 6-color printing on Adirondack chairs for outdoor furniture. So, and I got a big kick out of working with Target and their Hong Kong printer to do the labels that went on our cartons that eventually ended up in the store. So, it's always been my love, this industry. So when I look at all the different opportunities that I've had, whether it be working with the OEMs in equipment sales, working with the printers on financial analysis, and then now here to come over and, really try to continue to build the mission of a highway system for information for printers and suppliers. It's almost like a dream come true. I mean, I do feel almost every day that I wake up. I'm glad you told me it's Tactful Tuesday because that means it's Tuesday. I have a hard time realizing what day it is right now with the expo coming up. But I get to play in the sandbox every day. I get to work with OEMs who make printing gear. I get to work with people who make workflow easier. And then, of course, I get to work with the craft makers who are doing labels and packaging and commercial and signs and apparel. It's a thrill.
Yeah, man. I don't think you've lived until you've like spray washed off a screen so that you could make your own t-shirt. We did it back. I remember doing that back in the 90s, and it just felt like alchemy. Like it felt like
Yeah.
absolute magic. It's like, hey, my band has a t-shirt now. Look at that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty awesome. So it's about creating, and I think you've kind of captured that spirit of it. Just sort of gets in your blood somehow. Like there's a lot of people that I talk to are just like, whoa, it's kind of an accident. Obviously there are the people who are like fourth and fifth, sixth generations, but like myself, you just kind of stumble into it. But what you end up finding is that you fall in love with it, but it's not necessarily the technology. A lot of times it's really about the people. Like there are
Yeah.
just so many smart, engaged, creative people in this industry. And I'm wondering kind of framing this question from your background in those roles that you had at HP and Landa, where you were closer like to the hardware and print innovation, what were some of those lessons that you might have learned from the tech-centric environments that have stayed with you now as you run media and events and kind of have this 40,000-foot view of the industry?
Yeah, look, I think the solutions that a lot of the OEMs are offering to their clients, and even what I did when I was selling equipment, there's a universal trust that's built in any client relationship, and it's actively listening to the dialogue, to the pain points that they're talking to you about. But the most important thing is to try to shoot the gap and understand the things that they're not talking to you about.
Mm.
There's an interpretation that comes, and a responsibility, quite frankly, on the OEM side, that comes from having access to all of the people in the community who are using your product, and assimilating the likenesses between your clients, and then being able to elevate them and share best practices. Those undiscussed things are, I think, the relationship builders. I've got relationships that I started 25 years ago when I was with Heidelberg, and largely because, I was part of a moment of transformation with that client. And I still call a lot of them friends to this day. And that took me into my time with HP and with Landa. Being able to embark on missions to solve things together just is bridge building. And those things never go away. And so, to your point, the amazing people that are in this industry, you find them when you start talking to them, when you get in front of them and you're having a live experience, or you're solving things in a war room together. And I think that's what underscores why we go to events, not just like the expo, but lots of other fairs and micro events, is because that human to human interaction of discussing things and creating things and solving problems together is just universal.
Well, I mean, it's definitely all about the people. And you said something really interesting that I really want to kind of highlight and maybe dive a little bit deeper into, or if not just emphasize, is we talk a lot about, and a lot of people that I have on the show talk about like consultative sales and active listening. And it's like, and I always say, like, you don't do really business company to company, you do it person to person, right? You're a person at a company, you know a person at a company, there's a relationship there. But what you said that I find interesting is beyond active listening, like, hear what they're not saying. Like, find those gaps in like what they're not talking about, and find those opportunities to bring to them. And that's something that I haven't heard anyone say before. And I just want to highlight that. I think that needs to go on a short list of things for people to think about. Even those like myself who already do kind of consultative sales and practice active listening. Let's start to listen to what they're not saying to find those opportunities that we could bring to them that they might not know about. I
Yeah,
love.
it's taking action on what you're hearing, right?
Yeah.
And really synthesizing what you've heard, and even sometimes coming back to somebody and saying, I heard you say this. I think this could help you. And just being a partner. Of course, everybody has objectives that they need to do to
Sure.
sell their equipment, sell their wares, or whatnot. But I got a text this morning from one of my old clients. I probably haven't sold them a printing press in about 12 years. He was asking me for help in a particular region, looking for a sales rep. And I said, you know what? I've got just the guy. And, I know they're going to interview them within 48 hours. And it's simply because we trust each other and we still have a wonderful relationship. And those things are born from those kinds of conversations where you're listening and then you're solving the problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've had similar experiences in that too, and I think we probably have those because we are in touch, kind of being on like the media and event side. We're in touch with so many different
Yeah.
OEMs and printers. We have a pretty wide berth there, and I think that's great though, man. Like, that's one of the things that I love about the people too, is that connectivity, right? It's like, oh, hey, wait, I know somebody just that posted on LinkedIn, they're looking or whatever, and check this out. And bringing people together is something that I think we can appreciate as we get up there in our years in our career in the industry, right? I love that. So good.
Yeah, well, and look, one thing that hasn't changed from the time I got into the industry to now, and it's amazing that your name is Tactiful, because it really is. It's that tactile relationship with print
Yeah.
that everybody can go back to that first time that they understood what they were holding or smelling or feeling or touching, or even applying to a surface. It's called a substrate, right? Could be a shirt, could be a piece of cardboard, but that physical relationship. And I think it transcends many different activities in human life that, once you have a physical manifestation of something with your memory, it's a pleasure, right? So you try to remember that, you try to build on it. And everybody I've ever met in the printing industry can remember the first time that they had that aha moment about print.
It's tangible, man. It's tangible. Something that just came out of, I know that SAPI just redid a study there, like touch study with Clemson University. And one of the examples in there that Vicky Stroll talks about is there's like a coffee cup. There's this thing called psychological ownership that you develop. As soon as you touch something, you start to develop psychological ownership. And print is unique in that way because you don't really touch digital things. This maybe on site you get some, I don't know if it's faux psychological ownership, but there's this interesting coffee cup story of where like the person holding the coffee cup values it at $4.75 or $5.75. It's worth like $4, but the person not holding it values it at $2.75. So it's like just the touching of that thing. And I think that's what we we geek out so much on this when we teach the tactile nature of touch, because embellishment just takes that to the nth level, right?
100%. Yeah. Well, it's auditory and it's visual, and it or can be auditory, visual, and it's sensory, right?
Yeah, well, as many senses as you, and not to geek out on the psychological studies, but we spend a lot of time with them. The more senses that you can engage, the higher level of emotional interaction, behavioral economics start to kick in and everything, right? That's like, so imagine you have like something that has like, it feels like there's a coaster on the page and there's a coffee stain and it smells like coffee. Like whatever that piece is, it's just going to go bonkers in terms of whatever your call to action is, because you're engaging all of those different.
Just send me cookies. I want to smell the cookies. I don't need the cookies. I
Hey,
just want to smell them.
there's marketing agents that make big business. Did you know that like when you go through a mall, you're not actually smelling cinnamon buns, you're smelling an
Yeah.
artificial
I'm a
flavor?
big investor in Walt Disney World resort scents throughout my house.
Like it's like the craziest thing. They pump the scent in there, which gets your, so anyway, starting to geek out on some stuff. So as head of media and events for Printing United Alliance, you're in the business of connection. How do you kind of balance that editorial side, like that integrity, with commercial goals in terms of event programming, sponsorship, and media outreach? Because you guys do, first of all, I just want to say, and talk a bit about this, because I know your summits are something that have really been super popular, and I've heard so many good things about them because they're such a focused area of attention in between like maybe the big show. How does that connection happen, and what are you seeing in that evolving landscape?
I think this is a perfect example where one size does not fit all. Everybody has their tendencies on the way they like to engage with others, the way that they like to absorb and interact with content, which is why, to boil it down simply, you'll find us on websites, you'll find us on apps, you'll find us with micro events. We have the macro event with the expo. We do wonderful webinars. We do video recordings. We do podcasts. So many different mediums of, content being pushing out content. It's because everybody has different tendencies, and when we're trying to feed, let's call it to date, about 160,000 people in the audience, not everybody reads every newsletter every day. There's only a small percentage of that audience that reads the newsletter. So when people say, well, why did you have that in Mondays and Fridays? Well, it's because the person I might want to see it in Friday because they never got around to reading on Monday. That's why we were able to bring the best of the content into the micro events and then, capture that in the macro event of the expo. It's a well-oiled machine. It's taken our organization over 60 years to build, with over 30 pieces of technology that kind of feed all of this data in, so that we can deliver the best information we can to the person who, is showing us that they would like that kind of information when they want it. And really, we're not in the business to tell one person what medium that they should go towards. They actually tell us. Sadly, we're in the printing industry, right? But the print magazines as a distributor or as a mechanism for content delivery is waning. And I'm not telling anybody anything that they haven't seen or
you're not telling me nothing I don't know, brother.
and yet we are seeing the transition into digital. At the same time, we're seeing an explosion in interaction on our micro events. So, I think the amount of information that people want to absorb is perhaps content and maybe ebbs and flows with the amount of people that are involved.
Yeah.
But we have to continue to put it out, and that's what's so special about our organization is the nonprofit, where we've got the media arm, we've got the events arm, and I'm pleased to now lead both organizations in under one roof. Is it allows us to find out what's working and what's not working all the time.
Absolutely.
We actually get together every quarter for each of the main communities, whether that's labels and packaging or commercial or signs. And we look at all of our metrics in the data warehouse. We look at what's performing from a content perspective. We look at how are we performing from delivering the content. And it really just shapes ourselves into, I'd like to say steel sharpens steel, where we really look at ourselves every quarter and say, are we serving the industry the way that they expect us to serve?
Yeah, and I think it's a meet them where they are philosophy, right? Like just
100%.
again, you mentioned active listening in that personal sense. There's also an active listening to a community as well. And I find from my observation, the alliance, as it were, does a really good job of that, because I see you guys pivoting and shifting and trying new things, and then it like doubling down on the things that are really working. I mentioned the summits before, like people rave about those. Like every time I'm just like, oh, I'm going to this so-and-so, this summit, that summit or whatever. So I think you guys are doing just a hell of a job there. And if anybody's shown up at the expo, which we're going to talk about, Printing United Expo is coming up October 22nd to the 24th here in just a few weeks. And I know this is probably going to run next week. So it will only be, by the time this comes out, it's a couple weeks away. How's that going? And what are the expectations there? And what have you seen in terms of that evolution? And then there is a special program I want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. I can't imagine what we're going to broach about the expo and the tour that we're going to do. The expo is a phenomenal realization of a dream. Having, I'll put my PR hat on for a second. I ran public relations for Heidelberg at one point, and, we had a show almost every week somewhere in the United States. We had
Somewhere.
2 trade show managers that traveled on the entire United States, and they were setting things up and tearing things down. They never got to see their families. So when I was approached with the idea of Printing United, I didn't even ask any details. I said yes. I think it's exactly what the industry needs for the suppliers. I think it's exactly what the industry needs for the printers. And I think what you're going to see this year, not that we haven't had pockets of it before, but I think universally now you are going to see a coming together of most of the major segments of the putting ink on industry, right? So you've got the wide format and sign, you've got apparel, you've got commercial, you've got labels, you've got flex pack, folding carton, corrugated. I mean, I could go on and on about these pockets. And now this year we even have the industrial. So there's an association that focuses on high performance screen printing and label applications. So in your mind, think about the label that goes on your air conditioning unit outside, or the tag that goes on a pump on your pool, right?
So more manufacturing area.
Yep. They have a different level of performance that is required because it has to stay, legible for 10 years or 15 years. So that association is coming to our expo for the first time and hosting their board meeting. And I think that was this is the reality of the dream, is that we're finally seeing all these pockets come together under one big tent. Whether they're coming and doing their events on the front end or they're doing their events on the back end, we just want to facilitate. And really, that's the transition that we took this year. We started building this in 2018 for the 2019 show, but and we've created and created and created. This year was about formalizing process because we knew it was finally all coming together. And that's what my team has focused on over the last 12 months, is building a platform that's seamless for people to plug into, and really a focus on the mission of the Alliance. It's not our expo, it's all of our expo.
Right.
And that's really important. Our membership is made up of printers, suppliers, consultants, other providers. Everybody's feedback matters. So, we synthesize all this feedback and we say, okay, this is what our members are asking for. And we go to task, which is why our board is made up of, the suppliers and printers, because it's for the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And I love that you said facilitation, because that's something that I've been really big on in a much different way. A lot of our training and teaching that we do is facilitating groups to just lead them to get where they need to be, right? So you're not actively like doing the thing, you're just creating a space where the thing can be done. And I see that on a macro scale with what the Alliance is doing, is just creating this, I would call it both facilitation, and the framework for that facilitation is kind of what you guys have built out. And the flagship of that is what we're going to get to see in Orlando later this month. And
Yeah, it
so,
really is the manifestation of all the segmentation and all the knowledge and all of the connective tissue, if you will, between the people and the products and the segments.
yeah. And we're doing something pretty cool this year. We're doing this embellishment technology tour that we're at Tactful, just really grateful, and just got to send a shout out to your whole team. Lots of folks that you haven't been as involved in it, but we're part of, you and Mark, part of giving it the thumbs up. And then the rest of your team has just been incredible. We're going to run 5 different tours across all 3 days. And we're going to take people around 10 different booths that span the gamut from wide format to toner to inkjet, all of the different ways we can embellish print and add value to it. We're going to take them on a curated tour around the expo to the 10 different booths, and we've had some great sponsor support in that with those folks. We're looking forward to having fun. As you guys know, when Tactful shows up to a show, we typically have fun. I mean, we're going to be doing our software dog and pony at our booth, but then the tours as well. But talk about like saying yes to something like what we pitched for the tour, and why those are the kinds of things that you think are important to this framework.
I think it's a responsibility, right? As you mentioned earlier, I think you used a great word, stewardship, right? So I've been given this amazing opportunity to be part of and manage several of the best events in North America in the printing industry. And there's a responsibility that comes with that. And I think it's to make sure that no one is left behind or thinking that they are not welcome. Of letters earlier this week to half a dozen or so associations to make sure they understood that they are welcome, and to ask me personally if I could facilitate making their visit better or easier. And I think that's the now responsibility of the expo in perpetuity, right? We've now built this entity. I think we've now gained the strength from a foundational perspective to, I hope, see this last for another 100 years. Now, I definitely won't be around to see that, but that was the goal. And if I published an article, I think it was 2017 or 2018, about why I wanted to build Printing United. And it all comes back to it's what the industry needs. It's time. And, I think if anybody wants to plug into, the 30,000 or 28,000 people that are attending the expo, or the 825 exhibitors that are going to be there, and you feel lost, you can't figure out the technology, you can't figure out the maps or whatever it is, our entire staff is there to steward, and it's our responsibility to do that. So we've got close to 80 staff on site. They'll all be wearing little tags like this. And if you need anything, it's our job to help you with a smile.
Yeah, I think it's always been, I've always gotten the most help. And one thing I want to mention, I think it's appropriate to mention, especially in the context of this podcast, is even when I was at What They Think, technically a competitor, there was just a lot of cooperation from you guys as a technical competitor. And I think one of the learning lessons there is, we're in a consolidating industry, right? So like it's beholden to us to kind of all support one another, even if we're co-opetition or even if we're hardcore competitors, to like make the best of the industry no matter where we're at. And I think that's accomplished, again, backing all the way up to the beginning of our conversation, through personal relationships.
100%.
Through people, right? Because we know each other as people, even though we may be competing publications or competing OEMs or competing printers or whatever. We're all a part of this thing called print, and we can all work towards the success of that within whatever the framework is. And Chris, just tell you guys have created an amazing framework. I've been a fan for a long time, and we've supported what you do for a really long time. So best of luck with that. And if you go sign up for the embellishment tour, I'm sure there's going to be links all over the place. We're going to get you involved in one of those. But one thing that we always like to do on Tactful Tuesdays is we're beyond just talking shop all the time. So we want to find out about the person. Let's dig a little bit into who Chris is. Outside of print work, all that kind of stuff. You have some personal rituals, hobbies, things you're into? Like, what are you into, bro?
I'm into my family first and foremost. I've got amazing kids, and we've done a lucky job raising them here in South Carolina. And we've got one left in the house. We've been enjoying rugby on the weekends. He switched over from football to rugby about
Playing?
4 years ago. And
I played rugby at West Point. What position?
number 10.
Fast one then.
Yeah, so we'll have to talk about that when we see each other down in Orlando.
100%. 100%. We'll talk about that. So
Yeah, he's having
how
a
many
blast
kids
playing for
total?
them, and I've got 2 other kids that are in the workforce already. One is in law enforcement down in Charleston, South Carolina, and the other one is a coder for an app called Onyx. For anybody who's an off-road enthusiast, they're probably working on his code.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. I love that. Just a personal aside, like my youngest is 17. My oldest, I think, just turned 28. So I think we're in that period where you start to realize you begin to like learn as much from your kids as you're teaching your kids, I don't know if you have that experience, but I find it's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, getting older is troublesome in some areas, but the pleasure is something I wouldn't trade for the world, and that only comes with wisdom. So I think they call this in yours wisdom hair.
It's all getting gray down here. I don't have a lot up here, but
It couldn't be further from the truth. The type of professional I am now, having just turned 50, is very different than when I was in my mid 20s. And I think it comes back to a responsibility. I think as you get older, you're ready to take on more responsibility. You're ready to be a good steward. It's your job to help the next generation see through things that they're not yet ready to see for it themselves. I've got wonderful staff that are early career, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago. 8 years ago, when I first started here, we had a lot of mid to late career people. We've made a point to indoctrinate people into the industry, get them out into the live events, the open houses, get them excited about print. And I'm proud to say now we've got a great blend of young people, mid-career and late stage. I consider my late stage career. I know the alliance is in great hands for the next decade.
yeah, that's another part of it too, is like at our age, you sort of get there's like this give back gene that sort of
Yeah, 100%.
starts to kick in, right? And like same for me, like I wanted to do a lot more mentoring. I wanted to just like pass on any, you know, dumb shit knowledge that I might have over the course of the past quarter century, I guess it
Yeah,
would.
look, I think it's a responsibility for all of us to
I agree.
embrace. I sit on the Sunoco advisory board for the Clemson Packaging School. I sit at my alma mater, RIT, in Rochester, New York. I sit on the Print and Graphic Scholarship Foundation. And then I sit on the executive team here. And it really is making sure that we give everything we have to give back before it's too late.
All right, lightning round. A media or event in any industry that you drop everything to attend.
Oh, gosh, Digital Packaging Summit.
No, it doesn't have to be our industry, man.
You don't understand. I geek out on printing. I mean,
He was like, I'm staying home, baby. I'm going.
I am. I mean, Digital Packaging Summit, and really any of the summits as you mentioned, but the Digital Packaging Summit for me, where I really had a wonderful experience in the label community, and being there amongst 250 other executives who have similar wisdom that I do in the industry. It's just a joyful couple of days for me. If I could do that I can't do it all the time, but if I could do it every couple of months, it'd be great.
Yeah, and the great thing, if you see Summit at the end of the event, it's gonna be somewhere sunny. Like it's gonna be in some
That's true
amazing
too.
location. Like it's just synonymous for that. One piece of advice you would like to tell your younger self.
Oh, geez. Cat Stevens, take your time.
Take your time. Don't rush. I love that. I love that. Isn't that funny how we get older, we start to want to take our time, rush to get there, and then you're like, wait, slow down a little bit.
Yep.
All right, last one. Last book, podcast, or show that you really consumed that kind of
The last book that really consumed me, I'm not a reader. I fall asleep after 2 or 3 pages. So I'm a listener. It
Okay.
was called Walk in the Park. And the author is escaping my name right now, or my mind right now. It is a book about a gentleman's journey in thinking that he could do what the entire Grand Canyon walk, and the trials and tribulations that he went through physically and emotionally and mentally to do that with a partner of his. And, one of the neat things for me was the stories within a story. I like to tell people all the time that I'm the Forrest Gump of printing, because I've had an opportunity to work on a cruise ship and work in Germany and work in Brazil and work, throughout the United States in multiple different parts of the printing industry. But being able to tell stories that are engaging and teach while entertaining to earn, those precious moments of learning from one another is invaluable. And that book did that for me recently. Honestly, I think I finished it in a week and a half's worth of walks.
So just look it up. It's Kevin Fedarko, Walk in the Park.
Yeah, there you go.
It's about
Just a wonderful read about the history, and it goes into all of the Native American backstories about the park, and from thousands of years ago to modern day. So great read.
That's awesome, man. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on Taktiful Tuesdays. Again, Printing United Expo, we're going to wear you out with it. October 22nd to the 24th in Orlando. See Chris there and the rest of the Printing United Alliance and myself and the rest of Taktiful there. Chris, thanks for being on the show. Wonderful conversation with you. As always, I look up and I'm like, how the hell did 30 minutes go by? Because we have good people with good conversations on the show. Thanks for being one.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll see you all in Orlando.
See you, man.